Alright everyone, it is Dokkan time, and today's how to build video is going to be for AGL Super Vegito. Yes, this unit is the busted unit, back in the day, a busted unit that made me break and actually spend money on Dokkan Battle, fun fact. If it wasn't for this unit, I'm not entirely sure I would have really pushed Dokkan Battle too much. I don't know what it was back then, maybe it was the heavily, heavy divorce and everything else that I was going through at the time. But you know, I really took solace in using this unit. He was pretty fun. He was cool. And I broke and spent money on Dokkan to get this guy. But yeah, anyways, fun facts. Let's just kind of get into his kit here. So as far as 200% leaders go for Vegito, he doesn't have too many solid options, I would say. I would say his best options would be the new 10th anniversary Goku Vegeta exchange unit that fuses into Vegito. That is a 220% lead that he would be on at that point, 250 for health. And anything else, I would probably just say throw him on Majin Buu Saga with Gotenks, and then probably a Super Saiyan team with Super Saiyan Vegeta, transforming Vegeta. Otherwise, he actually doesn't have too many 200% options. It's very interesting, really. I think it's just because he's an older unit, so he just doesn't have as many categories to go around. As it is normal with Super EZA units do not get a change in their super attack. So he does still just raise allies' attack by 35% for one turn. As far as his passive goes, though, it has changed quite a bit for the better, obviously, but it could be better also at the same time. So he does have Ki +2 attack and defense 200% and 40% damage reduction, but he also gets an additional 40% damage reduction and counter on normal attacks specifically. So that means he has 80% damage reduction in total against normal attacks, not super attacks. Just keep that in mind. When attacking with 12 or more Ki, I don't know why they do 12 or more. He can only have 12 Ki. Attack and defense 150. For every attack received, he gets an additional attack and defense plus 25% up to 100. And then he does have a chance of performing a crit plus 15% up to 60%. So unfortunately, what this does mean is that there is no purpose in giving this unit crit. In my personal opinion, if a unit has more than 50% chance to crit, they do not need it in their hidden potential unless that is their entire purpose in the fight. If you do, I mean, this is a pretty old unit, so if you do already have crit on him, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It just means that you'll be more likely to get crits off of those counters. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I would try to pivot the best you can with your equipment and go into the other areas that we'll discuss once we go through his kit. So when your HP is 50% or less, you will guard all attacks and then foresees enemy super attack for 2 turns. So now what you can notice here on, I want to point this out. I'm not going to really give him too much credit here, but what you can see here is that when HP is 50% or less, it doesn't say once only, it doesn't say once per turn, it doesn't say anything like that. So what this means is that anytime you actually are below 50% or less HP, you will start guarding. Theoretically anyways. Theoretically, you should guard as soon as you hit below 50% HP. So this means that if Vegito isn't the one to take the attack anyways, the super attack, let's say you take a super attack from some other unit on a different unit and your HP falls below 50%, and then you go to him and you're below 50% HP, he will then be guarding. Now, he's already basically nullifying straight up all normals. 80% damage reduction goes a really stupid long way. But I do want to say that this is actually very important. And foresees enemy super attack for 2 turns is really nice because it does apply to the turn and the turn after. And that means if you're still below 50% HP, which would be crazy, I mind you, after that, you will once again proc this. So this should theoretically proc multiple times if that happens. Now, don't hold me to this, please, because I'm assuming this based on the wording. I personally have not had the chance to test this. I have not had the ability to test this reliably. It's very difficult to try and drop below 50% HP several times in a fight nowadays. It's honestly kind of more along the lines of you're gonna die. You either are gonna die or you accidentally hit below that or a unit got caught. It's very rare to fall below that without dying, really, in my opinion. Or at least based on how I build my units. So just think about that. When there is a superclass, enemy attack and defense 50%, and all allies key +2 and defense +20%, self-excluded. So he doesn't get his own buff. And when there's an extreme class ally, he actually gets an attack and defense buff of 100%, and then all allies key +3 and defense +30%. So he is helping and supporting quite a bit when there's an extreme class enemy, and he's still helping on a super class enemy, just not as much. But yeah. So let's drop down here. We got normal. We still have his normal links: Golden Warrior, Power bestowed by God, Fused Fighter, Shocking Speed, Prepare for Battle. These are kind of normal standard Vegito links, and honestly, it's going to show. Pretty much every single Vegito in the game is going to link up with this Vegito. That's just how it's going to be. He'll probably link up with a couple Gotankses, thankfully, and of course Gojitas. Those are going to be his primary best partners overall. But it doesn't mean other units that with Shocking Speed and so forth can't be really good link partners for him. So, with that all being said, let's kind of go into his defense numbers compliments of Halvard over here. So right off the bat, you're going to notice his defense is not anything to really go crazy about. I mean, full build up, post super 600k, it's not a lot. Versus a super class enemy, 700k. Versus extreme class enemy, 800k. Now, obviously, if you got support in there, you can get them up to 887. You know, we're not talking about extra domains. We're not counting this on a 220. You know, that is something I do want to kind of talk to Halvard about on this whole thing, because usually what he does is he calculates these on a 200%. What I'm curious about is if he's actually calculating some of these new 10th anniversary units under 220%. I'm not really sure if he is. It doesn't look like anybody asked the question or not. I would assume that with a 220 lead under the new tech Goku Vegeta, that these numbers will be higher. I would test this. If somebody can, if you want to test this, by all means, I'm probably going to test it right after this. I didn't think about it in all honesty. But, you know, I would say for standard players, he probably did 200%, and this is what you should assume. So the thing here to remember is that this means he's not going to tank super attacks at the 3 million level. Vegeta will die from a super attack at 3 million. It's just not going to happen. 40% damage reduction is not enough to really take down the 3 million damage marker. You'll just take too much damage. You'll take way too much damage, unfortunately. So you could either live barely against the 3 million super, that's type neutral to type advantage, or you will just straight up die. It's one of the two. It's kind of RNG heavy. So that's something to really think about with his defense, because it's not that high. He's really relying on that potential guarding on half health and the damage reduction. He's really, really relying on that. So let's just kind of get into his builds so that we can get to the role tips so I can explain a couple things. So as far as his 55% build goes, I would highly suggest that you just give him more additionals. Also, I messed up on that. Hold on a second here. I apologize for anybody that's been watching the video for this entire time. I meant to put this at level 12. My apologies. I'm going to have to make sure I put the timestamp for the how to build suggestions at this point, because wow, I apologize. So, yes, at 55%, he does start off with the level 5 additional from his hidden potential. So that means if you do just go ahead and use the silver and the bronze slot, you can get his additional 12. I would kind of just suggest leaning into that. It's the only thing that's really going to make too much of a difference at 55%. You got to understand, when you're at 55%, some of these units can feel really a lot weaker. So I would just suggest trying to emphasize on something that on one area or aspect that you can control and make him better at. Otherwise, I wouldn't blame you at all whatsoever if you just wanted to give him dodge, or if you wanted to give him a defense equip even, perhaps, Defense Orb would go pretty far, I feel, too. But at 55%, it's pretty minimal what you can do to really impact this character as far as how his performance will be other than this, in my personal opinion. But let's move on to his first level of dupes. So, for 2 dupes, you're missing 2 whole dupes, which means you're missing a bit of stats in here. For this, I would kind of suggest this build, and some people will probably kind of aim towards this build anyways. There's nothing wrong with that. So, I do understand that some people are probably going to be like, wait, Joe, why are you suggesting dodge? Doesn't Vegito counter? Don't we want to counter? Can't we tank anyways? Yes, you can tank normals. You can tank normals 100%, but you will not be tanking super attacks. It's just not, he just doesn't have enough defense. It's just not a thing. Anything above, I would say about 2.3, 2.5 million. I feel like it's pushing it right there. But unless you have the guard activated along with, unless you have guard active, I just don't feel like you're really going to survive any super attacks. So it's going to be really rough otherwise. And that's why the scouter is so important to survive. And keep in mind, when you dodge with Vegito, it does proc his counter. So even if you dodge, counters are going off. That's why technically a full dodge build for this Vegito isn't a bad thing, because even if you dodge, you'll still get the counter. So that is definitely something to keep in mind and move forward with. And not to mention, he is still only an AGL type, which means you're only going to get the 15, 20, 25, 27 dodge at maximum. That's still not a huge amount of number. It doesn't mean you're going to dodge a buttload of attacks. You only need to receive 4 attacks in order to be able to even be fully built up with this Vegito. So I would say on average you should be fine not to worry about dodging anyways as far as building up his passive goes. I just feel like this is one of the safer options you can definitely roll with if you decide to roll with a dodge build. Now on the other hand, this is the build I personally will be aiming for and what I've already pushed towards. I will be aiming towards more additionals and then put the rest into dodge. I feel like I want some more DPS on my units. That's just kind of how I roll, in all honesty. And I've never been a player that can rely on dodge. I just have bad RNG when it comes to dodge. I don't know what it is. So when it comes to the dodge luck, I don't always push towards it unless I feel like it's like mandatory. I don't think it's mandatory for this Vegito. What I decided to do is I gave mine a level 7 defense equip, actually. And then I actually had a special gold equip that gave more defense. This Vegito does not have special equipment orbs. It doesn't mean he won't get them in the future, but once again, that's why we put on EX skill orbs. So do mess around a little bit with the equipment, see how you feel about it. But I went for more defensive orbs, and I went for additional and put the rest into dodge. That's how I decided to build my Vegito. You don't have to build him this way. This is just how I preferred to build him myself. So, and with those build suggestions done with, I think we'll move on to the roll tips, and that'll be the last part of the video. So, for roll tips, it's going to look really slim here. You're not probably seeing a lot here. Here's going to be an interesting thing. A lot of people probably assumed he'd be a tank. I don't view Vegito as a tank. I view him as a sort of support unit. He does tank, obviously, he tanks normal, so he is a tank to a degree. But because he cannot tank super attacks, I feel that pushes him away from the true role of a tank. You know, when you imagine what a tank is, you believe that a tank is going to, well, tank everything. He's going to be able to stop all the incoming attacks, and you just move forward with that idea that the unit will be able to do that. Vegito can't always do that. It's very specific circumstances and very buffed up stats that require him to really live those things. So I view him more as a supportive unit because of the extra support he does have down here when facing specific allies. With the Scouter, that's a very big supportive utility-based part of his passive that you can utilize, and he's also raising allies' attack by 35%. Now, mind you, you can only fully take effect of his super attack, specifically in slot 1. So if you do have Scouter active and you do know he's safe in slot 1 to not take a super attack, then by all means throw him into slot 1. This dude tanks normals for free. 100% he does. But unfortunately, when it comes down to the end of the day and not being able to tank a super, unless he's under very specific circumstances, he needs to get his super attack to go off first. So post-super, he can maybe survive specific certain super attacks in the game. But otherwise, he's just not safe in slot 1. And once again, as far as his leaders go, I believe he only has 3 leaders as of right now at the current state of the game. I imagine this will probably change immensely as the year of 2025 goes on. So if you're watching this in the future, I apologize if there's not other leaders that are obviously better to run with him. But as far as 200% and 220 with this Goku Vegeta, these are the only best options specifically. I put the best options that you possibly can to really utilize a lot of these units. There's some units that I will really throw a lot into here because I feel like they're underused characters, but I don't think Vegito is going to be an underused character. I think people are going to use this Goku Vegito constantly throughout the year, and there's always going to be a reason they're going to want to run this Vegito. Same thing with Gotenks. The Super Saiyan Vegeta is the only one that's really thrown in here randomly. But he's in my opinion, the better Super Saiyan leader. And maybe if we get a better Super Saiyan leader down the line this year, maybe he can be replaced as a leader specifically. But otherwise, he's still a good option. As far as partner goes, I mean, he's Vegito. So, I mean, put him with other fusions, put him with other Vegitos that transform, put him with other Gojitas, and of course the Tech Goku Vegeta exchange unit as well. So that would be his best partners, per se, especially slot 1. Slot 1 units are his best friend, so that's something to keep in mind. And I think that's going to be it. I really do. I think that is it, unless I missed something. But I do like this unit, obviously. He's one of my favorite old units. He broke me to putting money into the game. And I'm going to enjoy using him again. I really am. It's going to be very nostalgic. It's weird to say that, but we are in the 10th anniversary of Dokkan, so. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Let me know how you're going to decide to build this super easy Vegito. Or if you even can, because we all know this is an old unit, and maybe you just don't want to put the stones into the hidden potential to change it. So, anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Have a good day and a good night.